To fully understand symmetry, we have to break it down into its different types. So here I have examples of the 4 different kinds of symmetry that a design drawn in the plane can have. For example, this design right here has a rotation symmetry. And by that I mean, if I take it and I rotate it around the red point in the middle, once I get exactly halfway around, the pattern looks the same as before I moved it. So that would be an example of a rotation symmetry. Of a particular kind, you have to rotate halfway around before the design locks into its old position. By contrast, here's a rotation symmetry, but this object has a different type because this has 4 arms instead of just 2, and so you only have to rotate a quarter of the way around the circle before you get back to where you started. So there are various different types of rotations depending on how far you rotate. Now, it's a little bit trickier to see reflection symmetries as a motion of the plane, but you can do it if you allow yourself to break out of the plane. So here we have this design, and if we let it flip around the red line, we see that it looks the same on either side. Although you'll notice the writing does not, right? So when we mirror reflect the writing, it looks different. You might notice this if you ever say hold a book up to a mirror, the writing looks all weird. That's because our writing is not mirror symmetric. But because of this reflection axis, the heart is, so it looks the same in a mirror. The simplest type of motion that gives us a symmetry is a translation. So here is an example of a design that has translation symmetry. Although to really recognize this as translation symmetry, you have to assume that the design continues off the page in either direction. But if it does, then you can take this pattern and just slide it. And if you slide it by the right amount, it will lock back into its former position, and it will look the same as before you moved it. And in fact, you can do that over and over again, so you get this line of translations. And finally, the most visually interesting of the symmetries is also, I think, the most subtle, and that's the glide reflection. So if you look at this vine and the way there are leaves pointing up and pointing down, it kind of looks like there could be a reflection across that middle line. But you'll see that the leaves are in the wrong position. So if we just reflect, then the down leaves aren't where they're supposed to be. The up leaves aren't where they're supposed to be. But if you reflect and then glide by just the right amount, you can get the vine to lock into its former position, and it will look the same. So where it gets really interesting is if you take a design that repeats over and over again and has one or more of these symmetries in it, you can understand its symmetry structure by looking at what symmetries are present and how are they related to each other. So for example, this scarf has 9 different designs on it. And the reason that these 9 designs are here is because each one demonstrates a different symmetry structure. If you look at it closely, you will find rotations, you'll find reflections, and also glide reflections. And there are many, many, many translations. So as you look through the artworks in this section, see if you can recognize which symmetries you're seeing and how they interact together.